Our book, Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, is available for purchase in bookstores everywhere. Polarity is a universal law. It can't be avoided. It's like gravity. It's all around us in our homes, our work environments, our communities, and our countries. If you misdiagnose a polarity as a problem, you can be left trying to solve the same issue over and over, never finding a sustainable solution. That's why polarity intelligence is an essential competency leaders can't afford to overlook. Having this awareness and knowledge compels us to share it with leaders like you around the world. Start your journey toward becoming polarity intelligent today. Get your copy of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, wherever you get your books.
This is the True Leader Podcast. Today we invited Dr. David Norris to be on our show, and we talk about how he helps physicians and other leaders incorporate emotional intelligence and financial intelligence into their lives. Don't miss it.
Welcome to the True Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the True Leader Podcast. This is Tracy.
And this is Michelle.
Surprise. Who else would be here, right?
She just cracks herself up.
I do. Well, we're in the studio. It's Friday. This is our last interview of the week. And I'm just feeling a little happy. I get to go home tomorrow. I haven't been home in about 2.5 weeks. So
I'm putting her on a plane, folks. She's getting out of here.
Like kicking me out. Get out of here. I've had enough of you. I'm over it. Right? Yeah. So, I'm just happy today. Is that okay?
That's totally okay.
All right. Good.
It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. We should be more joyful and happy.
Does that mean we can start our happy hour as soon as we're done with this interview?
We can, even though it's 10 o'clock in the morning. No, just it's noon somewhere or 5 somewhere, right? No, but we just had a really nice interview with David, and I just feeling good.
Yeah, it was a great interview, and I love it when people learn something and they are driven to help others with that learning.
Yeah, well, and I think too, I think I had some notions about the audience that this interview would fit for, because he primarily works with physicians who have their own practices. But, as we go through the interview, it really it's not just about that. It's for entrepreneurs. It's at the personal level.
Yeah.
Right. So everything we talked about applies to pretty much everybody, even if you don't have your own business or run your own practice or, just you got to manage all of these things that we talk about in your personal life too.
Yeah, you do. It's really life intelligence.
Yes, it
life
is.
Intelligence.
Yeah, a lot of intelligence in this particular episode.
Yes. Yeah, so let me introduce you to our guest, Dr. David Norris, and then we will turn it over to hear our conversation. So Dr. David Norris is a practicing anesthesiologist dedicated to improving healthcare providers' business intelligence. When he's non-clinical, he serves as a consultant and educator, helping practices survive and thrive. He completed medical school at the University of Kansas School of Medicine and both anesthesiology residency and fellowship in cardiovascular anesthesia at Vanderbilt University. He was always interested in the business side of healthcare and medical practices and has spent years studying those fields. He earned an MBA after he realized he was not adequately taught the skills needed to operate a business. The medical education system had let him down. Today, his mission is to help physicians and their staff gain the business intelligence necessary to create their desired practice. His first book, The Financially Intelligent Physician: What They Didn't Teach You in Medical School, was published in 2016. And his second book, Great Care Every Patient: A Physician's Guide to Process Improvement, was published in 2020. And this spring, he will be releasing Grand Rounds for Your Practice: Lessons on Leadership, Patient Satisfaction, Finance, and Negotiations. So let's have a very intelligent conversation with Dr. David Norris. Well, welcome to the True Leader Podcast, David. It's so great to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we are. We are. And I'll tell you what, listeners, today we have a whole lot of intelligence happening. As you know, Tracy and I work with leaders and introduce them to polarity intelligence, which is having a polarity mindset, healthy relationships, and meaningful dialogue. And David's work is really about helping physicians being financially intelligent and emotionally intelligent. So a lot of intelligence in this room today.
Ooh, mind's blown.
Mind's blown. So, David, let's start with financial intelligence for physicians. And can you please tell our listeners, what made you create a space and support for physicians to become more financially intelligent?
Yeah, sure. It all started when I realized I didn't know what I was doing. After residency, I got elected into leadership positions in my practice, which is a private practice entity. And when I started getting handed income statements and balance sheets, and I was asked to help make financial decisions, I realized I didn't really understand everything that was on these reports. And I felt like I needed more in order to do the best job I could, because I felt as the president, I owed it not only to the partners and shareholders, but the other 50 families that our practice supported through the very other employees. I felt like I really needed to get a handle on this, and this wasn't something I wanted to wing. So I went out and got my MBA while I was practicing full time. I had to go back to class. I spent every Saturday back in a classroom, and that was quite a shock after being out for 10 years. But it was a good experience, and I enjoyed it. I met a lot of other people in different industries who have similar problems, but they may have different solutions to think about. And then one of the classes in that course was a data analytics class. So what I did was I sent out a survey to every physician in the county, just asking them some basic financial intelligence questions. And it was a one-time snail mail. About 1,000 surveys went out, and I just had a self-addressed stamped envelope. And I got close to a 40% response rate, which really blew my mind, that I would have that many physicians help me determine where they were. And in that survey, I asked questions. Do you know how much it costs to see a patient? Do you know what your average revenue per patient is? Do you know what your expenses are? Do you know how much the practice spends every month? Do you know what the practice brings in every month? Do you review a financial report every month? Who's responsible for that? Do you have regular meetings where you sit down with your business manager or someone else and try and figure out where you are financially? And then I also ask questions on the personal finance side. Do you know how much you have in checking? Do you know what you spend every month? Do you know what you bring in every month? Do you balance your checkbook every month? And, I kind of took those two things and see if there was a correlation. And there is a correlation between financial intelligence, because how we view problems is how we view problems. How we view money is how we view money. It doesn't matter what the situation is. We might change hats throughout the day, I might go from a dad hat to a physician hat to a business leader hat. But how I view money is how I view money. And I think some of my fellow physicians just had bad prescriptions on their glasses, if you will. And my endeavor is to change that, because if you begin to view money differently in your business, it will trickle to finance, personal, or personal will trickle into business. And so that's really where it started. I asked about where do you feel your deficiencies were in running a business. Number one was finance, financial intelligence, reading and understanding financial reports. Number two is negotiations. Number three was kind of how do I improve processes or improve patient satisfaction? And at the bottom of the list was leadership, which led me scratching my head because I know some of these guys and I don't know if they're as great of leaders as I think they are, but that's okay. So that's how I started in that space, and just continue to see how I can help physicians and anybody really who goes to professional school that doesn't get business training, how to help you run your business, at least educate you so you can do it better on your own, or at least how to identify your knowledge deficits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's, I just love that. It's just kind of not where you plan to go, but where you were guided to go, right? Based on your own experience, your own needs, and then having that opportunity to recognize this isn't just something that you struggled with or that you were challenged by, but that really it was more prevalent than you had maybe even anticipated. So I just love how it's kind of just guided your career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it has. I mean, now whenever I'm faced with an opportunity, I ask, does it move me closer to my mission and purpose, which is to help providers establish and run the practice they desire through a business intelligence? And if an opportunity gets me closer to that goal or helps meet that goal, I take it. If not, I don't do it. And it's really helped declutter some things in life too. So, yeah.
Well, which I think also can be really important when you have when you're running a business, right? And when you have to be financially intelligent, right? All of those things take up a certain amount of space in your life. And when you're doing multiple things and got your finger in multiple pots, so to speak, right? It's a little bit harder to pay attention to the things that really are significant and important to helping you achieve your purpose or your mission. So I love that too. And I think, what I'm hearing you say is this isn't, just applicable to physician practices, that this is really applicable to any professional who's running some kind of, enterprise or business. And I think it's really true for all of us. Like you said, professionally and personally, we have to be financially intelligent. This isn't some unique intelligence that only applies to a few people. It applies to all of us. Mm-hmm. And it really is representative of what we have identified as the mission and margin polarity, right? We're here to serve a purpose, right? And have a mission in our lives. But at the same time, in order to serve that purpose, we need to have financial means to do so, right? And to maintain a margin that, serves us both professionally and personally. And so I think this is just a great example of that polarity. And I love that you brought it up, that it's not just professional, that it's personal too.
I do too.
Yeah. So what are some examples? So when we manage a polarity that has, two interdependent poles like mission and margin, the only way to leverage that and to get to that greater purpose is to take action. So what are some action steps that you help physicians or other professionals implement to really leverage this financial intelligence?
Sure. So the first step is to realize what you don't know. And what I've found is we've had a couple practices who have had their business or office manager abscond with millions of dollars, and they didn't know it for years. And when I asked one of my friends in that practice, I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "Well, we didn't read your book. Number one. Number two is we only looked at the bottom line. right? We never really studied the reports. We never dug into the data. So number one is understand what you don't know, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I tell clients, I said, I would much rather you feel stupid in a small room asking questions about reports or finances that you don't understand, rather than, I don't know, look stupid in the public papers when it comes out in the newspaper somebody stole millions of dollars from you. So the first part is get over yourself, realize you're not going to know everything, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And it's your business, it's your practice or your partner's practices, and you all have a responsibility, yourself, your families, and your employees. Number two would be really focus, and look at your reports, know what's on those reports, and then really dive into them, track and trend them. In the book, I talk about some metrics you can choose to help determine the financial health of your practice. Pick the ones that make sense to you or that you understand, and then trend them over time. It's no different than trending a patient's hemoglobin A1C over time to see how well the diabetic medicine's working. And if we see a change or a trend in that hemoglobin A1C is going up, is it patients not complying, or they are complying, diet changed, or is it just not working anymore? And really what that's to do is to spur you to ask those questions. Why is this not working? Is it patients not compliant? Is it the wrong drug? Same thing in finance. Why are my expenses going up? Or why is this line item increasing? Or why is the revenue decreasing? Why is accounts receivable, the money we're owed, increasing? Is that a process issue on our side, or a payer slow walking their payments? But you got to ask those questions. And the only way you can really find those questions to ask is to look at those reports regularly, at least monthly. And then I think, you need to realize that profit's not a bad word. I think when I was in residency or med school and I'd ask these things, I was kind of poo-pooed and said, you don't need to worry about that. We're in a noble career. I'm like, yes, I'm in a noble career, but I have to have enough money coming in so that I can pay everybody, pay the rent, pay utilities, employees, so I can keep doors open. Because the minute I can't afford to keep the doors open, my patients can't get care. And so, and we it's that balance. Like, I need to be profitable, even if you're a nonprofit. You still have to have money coming in enough to pay your bills, and that takes financial intelligence and being responsible and accountable for those. So those are some things I think that they really need to think about all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're a physician or like my wife's friends who opened up her own shop, a PT clinic. She still has the same problems, once you begin to build that habit, right, and you have to build the habit in order to, that will retrain the way you think. And then once you've retrained the way you think, the problems become a little easier to identify and deal with.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point, to establish the habit, because it is about having a habit, right? It's creating that space in your calendar, right? Making sure that you are doing your due diligence, at, like getting into that habit of a routine of, looking at the financials and doing the, going through the steps that you mentioned. So I think that's,
Well, it also is really applicable to one of the principles of polarities, and that is to be vigilant. Like, you can't just do it once in a while, to make sure that you're catching those trends and you can course correct. And I also loved what you said about, are the action steps still, are they continuing to work? Because sometimes you have to change action steps if you're not getting the outcomes that you want. And I love your analogy to a medical situation. Right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's no different than when I go fly. If I'm flying and I got clouds ahead or the wind's blowing me off course, I'm tracking and trending the whole time, and then I make a deviation, and that's the whole point of this is, you always have to be tracking and trending and be willing and open to making a different decision. You make the best decision you can with the data you have. And if the data changes, don't be married to the first decision. Realize that I need to change course. And I think some folks get married into a decision, and they have a hard time with that. It doesn't mean that you admitting you made a mistake. You're saying data changed, right? And I think that's part of the mindset that leaders need to adopt and realize.
Yeah, that's so true. And then I think too, what I like about looking at this through the polarity lens is it's the both and so one impacts the other. So the fulfillment of the mission, right, also impacts the margin, and the fulfillment of the margin impacts the mission. So it's looking at the interdependent relationship between the two. They're not exclusive of each other. They impact each other with that interdependent relationship. So I think it's really having that both and lens and being able to assess and know quickly, when you are off course, to your point too, right? Knowing rapidly when you need to course correct, and then just not hesitating, but putting the actions in place to make the adjustments that you need to get back those positive outcomes that you're looking for, both mission and margin.
Yeah, and I think if you know every line item on your income statement, you should be able to look at each line item and say, does this expense support a process that supports our mission and purpose of the clinic?
Right.
And if it doesn't support it, why am I paying for it? Why is it on our balance or income statement? And I think, that's going to take some work, and it's not fun nor pleasant, but that's how you cut unnecessary expenses. So does this line item really support what we're trying to do here? And if it doesn't, why is it here? And then can we get rid of it? Or how do we find a cheaper alternative? So I think if you keep that in mind as you go through your financial reports, and you say, what's the mission and purpose of the clinic? And does this expense support that? I think you can find a way to cut some fat, if you will.
Yeah, that's great. Very important role that you're playing there in helping others with that, manage that. Let's shift to emotional intelligence now, David, which is really that self-awareness, being socially aware, also in your practice and with whoever you're with. What have been your personal lessons about becoming emotionally intelligent?
Well, that journey started a long time ago. A friend of mine introduced me to DISC, which is a personality assessment tool. But it's not only just an assessment. The guy I learned a lot of it from was really big on application. And so it starts off with self-awareness. Why do certain people bother me, or why do I have pet peeves with certain personality styles? And that actually is kind of explained by my own personality style. So once I began to understand who I am and why I think or behave the way I do, I began to realize that others behave and think the way they do because they have a different style. They have a different motor, or they have a different focus, right? Some folks are really fast paced and want to go. Others are a little more reserved or slower paced. There's nothing right or wrong with that. That's just who they are. And then some people are far more task oriented. Some people are more people oriented. And then in the DISC, the way we teach it is you get a quadrant, 4 quadrants, and then from those quadrants, we learn who we are. And then once we learn who we are, we can then begin to realize that perhaps some of our behaviors or the way we say things, facial expressions, are interpreted differently by folks who have a different personality style. And it may be that we mean nothing by it. It's just who we are, but they've interpreted it differently because they're receiving a facial expression differently than, say, someone else. And once I began to learn this, and I began to see how my 2 children were very different in the personality styles, that's when I realized this is powerful stuff. So I communicate differently with my son than my daughter. Okay. My son is a very task-oriented, reserved individual. He's very analytical. My daughter is far more people-oriented. She's far more concerned with relationships and feelings and how other people are feeling and what they're thinking and feeling. And I realized if I want to have a good, solid, strong relationship with my daughter, I need to talk to her in her language or in terms of her emotional language. And so whenever I start, whenever I'm with her, I talk to her a little differently. I'm not the same with my son, and I'm not just because it's easier for her to receive the information I'm saying based on how I present it to her. And this really struck home to me years ago when I was working on an article for a publication, and I just couldn't quite get the word count the way I needed it to be. And I was sitting in my study, and I was like, how do I get this down to the word count? I got to cut a few sentences. How do I combine those? But I wasn't really flowing at the time. And my son comes in, and I have a furrowed brow, thinking like this. And my son comes in and says, "Hey, Dad, what you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to get this problem solved. How can I help you? What do you need?" And he said, "Well, I'm just going to go over to Kohl's for a while, just letting you know I'm leaving." I said, "Great, have fun." And about 5-10 minutes later, same look on my face, my daughter walks in and says, "Hey, Dad, what are you angry about?" Right? And I'm not angry. I'm in the middle of a thought. I'm trying to figure this problem out. But since he and I are far more aligned, he picked up my facial expressions as he would display them, okay, which is one of deep thought. She sees a furrowed brow and sees anger rather than thought or a problem solving. And that really, when that happened, I'm like, this stuff is real. This stuff works. And so when I'm with her, I don't frown, or I try and watch my facial expressions with her. And with my son, I don't really need to change much. But when we interact with her, we do interact a little differently. And she also now knows that a furrowed brow on Dad doesn't mean he's angry. He may just be deep in thought, because we've taught the children this disc, and we've taught them that not everybody's like you. In fact, there are probably more majority of people are less like you than you think. And in order to get along in life, realize that there are differences. And if you begin to master that, I think it can solve a lot of unnecessary problems in relationships, whether it be personal or business. As a leader, it helped me with my mother-in-law. It helps me with my wife, because and it helps me with patience. When I walk in the room, um, after a few questions, I can kind of pick up some cues as to which personality style they are, if they're a D, I, S, or C, and then I adapt my questions and the way I present the information to the patient differently, because that ties into patient satisfaction, right? If I talk to you, so if you're if you're high energy and very people oriented, you're what we call a high I. These people talk and talk and talk and talk, and they like to tell stories. And so if I'm in a hurry and I bump into one of these people, as a physician and as somebody on the other side of that, it drives me nuts. But I know that if I try and shut that down, their perception of the care I give is one that I'm cold and I don't care, and I'm not really interested in their problems. So what I have to do when I bump into them is I have to take a deep breath and say, "David, this is a high I. You need to treat them and talk to them like a high I, and you're just going to have to let them talk for a while." It's like when I walk in and say, "Have you ever had a heart attack?" "Well, there was this one time I was in California and I was at my niece's wedding, and then we went to wine country, and then I started having panic or chest pain, and we went to the ER, and after about a couple hours, they said it was just heartburn. It wasn't my heart." I'm like, "Okay, that was a yes or no question, but I'm not going to get irritated with you because you told me the story, because that's important to you. As that personality style, it's very important to you." Whereas if I have somebody like my son come in, they have their own EMR, right? They come in and they have every procedure, all the meds, everything laid out, and they want specific answers. And they want to know that I know what I'm doing. They don't really care about the touchy-feely thing. They just want to know that competent people are going to be taking care of them. And then that conversation goes very differently than one, say, like if I were going to treat my daughter. And I've noticed as I began to apply that years ago that those patient satisfaction scores and what patients say about me and my staff after the fact changed dramatically. But it takes work, it takes effort. But and I think as a leader, and when you begin to lead a team, select a team, certain people, personality styles are going to be motivated or dismotivated by certain things. And, when you talk to your different personality styles as a leader, they're all going to be great people, but they're going to have different motivations, and you're going to need to communicate to them a little differently, each one individually. And if you do that and you can learn that stuff, you can become, I think, a very good leader and one that is well respected and liked.
Well, we do a lot with, we also have used the DISC. We've each done it. We work with leaders on their DISC, along with other tools too, assessment tools that really help, you discover what your core essence is, personality-wise, preferences, the Enneagram, strength finders. So there's a lot of different assessment tools, and the DISC is one that we use as well. And Tracy and I are completely opposite in every single one.
Drive each other crazy.
Yeah. But to your point, and it's really important, to know those differences and then know how to leverage them. Because we all are different. We're all unique. And then I think the emotional intelligence about it is being really aware of it and being able to decide and make the choice yourself how you're going to respond in that situation rather than just, letting things drive you crazy.
Right. Well, and I think it's awareness, right?
Yeah, it's awareness.
It really comes back to just being aware. And, I think doing the best that you can, like you said, to meet people where they are at.
Yeah.
And just trying to, not just always looking through your own lens, but to put on somebody else's lens and how they're seeing things or how they would prefer to be addressed, and just really listening. I think it really comes back to the healthy relationship principles and meaningful dialogue, right? It's just meeting people where they're at, being intentional in your communication, paying attention. And, I think when you have good intentions, it goes a long way. We're not always going to be perfect at it, but it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of different, strategies, like you were talking about, kind of paying attention to their preferences, trying to speak to them in that way. And are there any other strategies that you help people with to leverage this emotional intelligence and this awareness?
Well, I think number one, the person has to buy into it. I've met a lot of people who kind of poo-poo it. And, at first I kind of did until I said, all right, I'm going to go in with this an open mind and see if it really is applicable. And once I began to dig into it, I really realized that it is powerful stuff. And, I know there are a bunch of different things out there. I chose DISC as my primary go-to source because it's simple for me. It's basically 2 questions. And then as I began to practice honing how I apply it to myself and being aware, I'm able to better use it, with others. And I liked what you said. You respond, right, and rather than react, because if we're not aware of ourselves and how this person may be interacting with us differently than what we would prefer, if we react, we make mistakes more often than if we actually respond, because responding means we've taken time to think. We've taken time to analyze our emotions and analyze what's going on, and then we make a measured response versus reacting. And when you react, that's when you create more problems for yourself. And I used to react a lot before I learned this. And Now I respond more. and life and relationships have gotten easier. I think if you're going to pick something like this and implement it, really adopt it and implement it, and then take it seriously and with your people. Flight Safety, which is a pilot training company here in town. They actually do a similar disc-like thing, and on the badges, everybody has a badge, their name badge. They have the different color code for whatever they are. So when you immediately walk into that person's office, if you've never met them, you immediately know what it is their style is, so that you can adjust your interaction with them accordingly. But that takes a conscious effort, and one that really comes down from leadership. Like, this is important. We all want to succeed. We all want to take care of the patients, and different personality styles may be better for different job duties in the office or in the clinic. But you all have to work and get along, and don't take it lightly. This is powerful tools, and I don't care which one you pick. I just pick disc because I'm a simple man. But,
simple is good. Simple is good.
Yeah, I like simplicity. Yeah. I think that's great too. And I think, the other thing too is just leveraging inquiry. I think to your point about how we interpret others, I think it's always helpful to say, here's what I'm picking up. Am I on track with this or not? It's like your daughter, are you angry? Like, you look angry, but rather than make an assumption about people, because you said like they'll read your facial expressions or, and I think we do make interpretations that are false. And so I think the other thing around this is leveraging dialogue to say, let me check in with you on something, because this is what I'm picking up. But, is that accurate? And I think sometimes when we're not certain, that's a great way to, to not make a mistake like that, or not to react to something that maybe isn't necessarily a truth, right? It's just an interpretation. So I love that you brought that up too.
Yeah, and I think if you start every interaction with people-oriented first and then moving to task, you're going to capture a lot more of those interactions and turn them into positives initially than if you just start with task. Simple, how you feeling? What or what are you thinking? Those sort of things, saying that, listen, I want to understand what's going on with you at this time, and a simple question like, how you feeling, or what are you feeling? It will open those doors of those dialogues, if you will, and can really help the leader establish those good, strong relationships that are built on trust. And honestly, that's what leadership is, right? Trust. So if you know me so well that I trust you, that we've worked together for so long, or I can trust you that you have my best interest at heart, even though we might be a little different, I'm going to perform a lot better, and I'm going to go above and beyond sometimes than what might be necessary. But that's because you've demonstrated you're taking the time to trying to get to know me as an individual.
Right.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so important. And it doesn't have to take a long time either. I think that's really key too. Like, people think it takes a long time, but it really doesn't have to, especially when you just get to, what's most important for you today, or what's most on your mind today. You can draw that out of people pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's like one of our processes. We never start a meeting without some kind of check-in.
Yeah.
Whenever we come together, it's first, let's check in on where we're at, how we're doing, how we're feeling for the day, like what's on our mind. So it gives you a chance to kind of get present with each other and see each other as human beings first, to your point. And then we get into the business. No,
That's right.
Then we get down to the task.
That's right.
Stuff still has to get done.
That's right. It's another polarity.
It's both and, right? Got to have the relationships, but you got to be productive at the same time. So, it's about really getting to be masters at balancing both.
Yeah.
I have one other question that came up for me. What have you found in relationship to the financial intelligence and emotional intelligence? Have you looked at any kind of correlation or relationship between the two?
I mean, no, I haven't actually dug into that data. I would say, I would say that your task-oriented people are going to adopt and pick up the finance stuff a little. They're going to be more interested in that because it's hardcore data, it's numbers. It's not fun, but it's numbers and data that they can get their head around. Individuals who tend to be a little more people-oriented, more about the feelings, are going to have a harder time, I think, adopting or trying to learn that material. But that doesn't mean that they can't and that they shouldn't. It just means it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you, but it's still in your best interest. Just like if I'm an accountant, I love numbers. It's in my best interest to learn emotional intelligence, to be able to know myself, know other clients or people I work with, and that makes it all better. I mean, the two, in order to have, I think, a successful practice, are necessary. And what will come easy for one may not come easy on the other side, but you got to have to work at them both. And that's life. Life is hard. You have to work at it. You got to work at life, but in the end, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Well, when you can get a good balance, and it's dynamic, it's not 50-50, right? But when you can get yourself to a place where you're fairly well balanced between the two, getting positive outcomes, it's a little bit more easy to stay in that momentum and to continue to gain ground than when you overemphasize one and neglect the other, because then you end up right in those negative consequences. And it takes more effort, more energy, more focus and attention to get you out of that than when you're paying attention to it over time. So I appreciate that. It's been a really great conversation.
Yes, it has. Yeah. It's been wonderful.
Thanks.
Well, David, we're at that time of our interview where it's time for the mystery questions. So we always ask you a couple questions to get to know the true you. And of course, you don't know what's coming, so get your intelligence ready. So I'm going to ask the first one, and Tracy's going to ask the second one. So we want to know, what is your favorite activity to unwind from a busy day?
My favorite activity, honestly, if I have a lot of stress and I just want to get away and I do something that's gonna make me feel relaxed, is I go fly. I'll jump in the airplane and I'll go fly for a while. It's very technical. You got to know what you're doing. But once you get up there, you're almost alone if no one else is on the radios. You can go where you want to go, do what you want to do. And it allows me to see the world from a different perspective, right? Because sometimes, I'm down here, and the day's not going great or whatnot. But once I get up there, it's peace, it's tranquility. And the problems that are down here look a little smaller. And they really do. And then, so I go out and I'll go fly to help relax. And it's a lot of fun, and it's something that's very technical because I'm very task oriented. So, it's very task oriented activities, and that kind of recharges me. That's how I recharge my batteries. So that's what I like to do.
That's awesome. I love that.
Me too.
I love that. Okay, here's question number 2. If someone were to write a book based on your life, what would the title be?
I guess not done yet, because I know what my mission and purpose is and what I want to do. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've learned from the mistakes and I've adjusted course. And I still don't know. You ask me where I want to be in 5 years. Right now, I know where I want to be in 5 years, but you ask me in 4 years, honestly, it might be a little different. So it's constantly evolving, constantly changing. Priorities change throughout life as we age or things happen in life. What was once important to me is no longer important. My priorities have changed. So yeah, I'm not done yet. I still don't know where I'm going or what I'll be doing in the future. I have an idea, but I'm not married to it. except for my
That's
wife.
great.
The wife I'm still married to.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, what a great conversation. I've just really enjoyed this. All of this intelligence floating around here today.
I have too. Yeah. So thanks for coming on the show and just sharing your work that you've been doing, working with physicians and other leaders, David. I think it was very insightful and really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah. And I think really applicable at the personal and the professional level. And it, for entrepreneurs, for professionals with practices, for just individuals, I think this is a great learning for everybody. So I really appreciated it.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Is there any parting thoughts that you want to share with our listeners before we close up for today?
Yes, always be learning. Realize that you never have all the information. Always be learning, and never be afraid to ask a question, because that's how we fill that knowledge gap. And I would say, particularly those individuals who are highly trained and specialized, we kind of get stuck in that rut. So always be learning, have a growth mindset, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And then once you do get the information, apply it. Not having the information is one thing, but you got to put it into action. So
music to our ears.
That's right. So those would be my final suggestions for your audience.
Great. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Oh, sure. They can go to my website. It's davidnorrismdmba.com. And there they can learn about, my consulting work. They can learn about the 2 books I have now and the 4 new books. I'm releasing a series in a couple months. It's called Grand Rounds for Your Private Practice. And they're little vignettes or little short pieces with some food for thought at the end. Topics are leadership, negotiations, patient satisfaction, and financial intelligence. And they can find me on LinkedIn, David Norris, MD, MBA, I believe, or on Bookface or Facebook or whatever the young people call it these days. I don't know.
Okay, we'll put those links in the in our show notes for people so that they can readily find you. Well, thanks again. It's just been fabulous. And for our listeners, thank you. We appreciate you listening in today. And if you heard something that you really resonated with you, or you think others would also get value from, please share the episode and leave us a review. We always love to hear what you're getting from the show and from the different episodes. And so please write a review and go ahead and subscribe on your favorite platform, whatever it is, to make sure that you never miss an episode of the True Leader podcast. And if you prefer video, which we really look good today in our little red jackets, you can check us out on the YouTube channel that we have as well. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we will be back again soon.
Bye.